flying around the Earth from another planet, looking down with a space telescope, and you looked into our cities, and you looked down at what you actually saw, what you'd see would be buildings, roadways, overpasses, highways, and cars. You wouldn't see people. You'd see these little metal boxes with wheels. You would think they run the planet, because they do in cities. The cities are for cars, they're not for people. And guess what? The cities that invest in people first, Vancouver, Canada is a great example. Toronto, Canada is another example. Robert Stevens, the Toronto planner, is here. Talk to him about the neighborhood strategy in Toronto, how successful it is. When a city builds its city around people first, bicycles, public transit, and cars at the bottom, then you know you're on the right path. When you look at this, you see cars first, people second. And when we map this, and we do not crime maps, but fear maps, where are you most afraid? Where are you least afraid? Well, here's one from a few months ago of a city. Notice where the red dots of high fear are in this city. Look carefully at the map. They're all in the parking lots. It's the urban parking car spaces where people have the fears. And when you go down to the ground and you do what Jane Jacobs does, you look carefully, what do you see? You see designs like that. Empty designs that are scary, where you're walking past dark areas where people can run out. Poorly marked for pedestrians. If it's lit at all, it's lit poorly. We treat the public space so poorly that we forget. When you disrespect the public space, you disrespect people. If people are disrespected, they can't possibly mobilize against crime. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It's not hard to figure out. How do you turn it around? Philadelphia uses murals. 3,000 murals throughout the city, which very seldom get graffiti, by the way. Murals in places next to a food store or a corner store. Fabulous murals. How do you tackle graffiti? All kinds of innovative, on-the-street, bottom-up strategies. Here's how Canada Post does it. The postal system in Canada, how do you prevent a postal box from being graffitied? You create a painting artistic scheme on the post boxes that looks like they're already graffitied. Yet it has some artistic feel to it. It looks kind of cool, really, doesn't it? It's kind of weird, but kind of cool. I mean, the government being cool, how rare is that? It's not a normal thing for the Canadian government, I can assure you. Here's an example that came across a few weeks ago, and this is a young design student in Denmark, and she spent her master's thesis in Glasgow, Scotland. She did it on this. Now, there's something interesting and unique happening in this photograph. Take a minute, see if you can see what it is. It's not just the cars. Look carefully. Here, let me show you the next photograph. It's showing the same phenomena in a different part of the city, and you'll see it right away. The lights are blue. The Glasgow city installed blue lights as part of an artistic, aesthetic strategy, and they discovered magically crime went down. They didn't know why. They didn't intend that. The student I'm corresponding with now tells me she thinks it has something to do with the serotonin levels in the brain. But this is an unsteady phenomenon. The Japanese railway system adopted this on Japanese railway platforms and found that suicide rates dropped. These are the kinds of interesting, strange phenomena we can do from bottom-up planning. Second generation, as I said, is a motivation strategy. It deals with the cohesion and the culture. I won't get into the details of it, but it's very complicated. But essentially, we do things. And here's an example of how it works. So here is an area under a highway overpass. Very scary, very dark. A lot of drug dealers hang out there. Often graffiti is sprayed there. You can't see it in the photograph, but it's there. What would you do about that space to make it more human, more safe? What would you do? Think to yourself, what would I do there? Would I do murals? Would I do lights? A group I asked in Monterey a couple of days ago, they said, well, how about a skate park for the kids? Great. But don't forget, 2-4 width. 2-4 width. Always width. So Jim Dyers, my friend from Seattle, who does this wonderful neighborhood participation strategies, went to the neighbors and he says, come up with a strategy. So they came up with a public icon, a public statue of some kind, but they wanted to make it a cool, funny, weird statue that would attract people so they would go down there. And this is what they came up with. Now, if you look carefully, this little ogre or troll or whatever it is actually grabbing a car, a Volkswagen, I think, in its left hand. You see that? Isn't that cool? It's become a tourist attraction in the city of Seattle. It's so popular, it's got an international reputation. There's websites about this troll. Groups are coming from around the world, including groups from Thailand. Buddhist monks from Thailand are coming. Now, this is cool stuff. This is how you engage the street, with social, cultural strategies that impact the physical environment and reduce crime, all through local knowledge. Macarena calls it native knowledge. That's what it has to be. If you haven't read the book by Paulo Freire, the famous Brazilian, called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, you must read this book. He talks about this back in the 60s. This is Portland, how they do intersections. Isn't that beautiful? I stood in this intersection for half an hour and I watched every car slow down almost to a stop, and there were no stop signs. That's a T station, kept up by the neighbors. People can figure stuff out. And we did the same thing in Rochester a few months ago, and there are the kids. The kids, by the way, are the key. The kids. I always go to the kids. We get games for the kids, activities for the kids. Macarena does the dream strategy she'll talk to you about. My friend Wendy Sarkisian from Australia does barefoot mapping. You get your bare feet out and you walk on a map with paint. It's great fun. Fun is key. So here they are making this beautiful street design to attract people. And here's the strategies of safe growth planning. It's on the website. I won't get into it now. But what's the future? So this is second generation SEPTED. Where do we go from here? Well, we need a policy that helps neighborhoods to become enabled. We need to learn not so much SEPTED, not so much crime prevention strategies. We need to learn how to get to the neighbors, how to activate the neighbors, how to get neighbors to participate. You in Mexico have such an advantage over us in Canada and the United States. Such an advantage. You don't know how lucky you are, because you have many of the community structures that we've lost. You need to hurry up, get going, and teach us how to do it, because we forgot. This is a publication that I participated with Tinus Kruger, who's here from South Africa, a few months ago. It is about the environment and SEPTED. The environment is part of the equation now. It's the 21st century. It's a new game. And not long ago, the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the engineering department, put together a publication thinking about the environment and crime and SEPTED, and they came up with this book, New Energy for Urban Security through Green Environmental Design. I think the idea of green design is a good one. Their theory is they would use technology. So here's a bus stop using computers, high tech, the cloud, the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs computer cloud with all access to Google and Maps and all the rest of it in a bus stop that's transparent. So you can see natural surveillance through it. And you can touch parts of the screen, kind of like Star Trek. I love Star Trek, so it's really cool. Touch it and it does things for you. It tells you where you are. You can call the police. This is their vision of how we can do this. They basically call it third generation SEPTED. Who knew? Here's another example of how you prevent graffiti. You grow the wall. You don't need to paint out, do anything. You mow it. It grows itself. So these are the kinds of things that I think we need to think about in the future. This is the direction I think we need to go. I think we need to think through the strategies of SEPTED, first and second generation, maybe even third generation. I think we need to start thinking carefully about using the great analysis we've seen today, and you'll see later on this conference, analysis that tells us much about crime patterns, crime mapping. But we can't stop there, because crime mapping only uses police the recorded statistics, and that only tells us a small part of the story. So we map things like fear. We map other kinds of things. The community participates in the analysis. We don't do the analysis to them. We work it with them. I think that's where we have to go with this. That's the future. And finally, some resources I'd offer you as a final closing comment. The International Septet Association, which I mentioned already. I write a blog every week. I just put out one about the blue lights. Actually, Ivana, the young graduate student who wrote it, she wrote the blog this week about the blue lights. I'll write one about you probably next week. I invite you to come in, read. I try to do as much as I can. People comment. We have a good dialogue, and you're welcome to do that. So that's what I have to say. I'm happy to chat with any of you about any of these topics. This is an exciting time. It's especially an exciting time for Mexico, and I wish you the best of luck.